Hi, I'm Jabriel Andrade. I'm here with Michael Moran, who is a clinical manager at, you can say it with me, it's Deer Park.
Deer Park Family Care Clinic and Deer Park Urgent Care.
Yes, and we're just here to talk about how, the clinic and everything's been going with the past. I mean, everyone knows what's happening in the
Yeah.
past year and a half, but just kind of how it's been going for you. So I'm just gonna preface this. I've never been up to Deer Park. Kind of what is it like up there for those who haven't been? Like, is it nice, kind of chill rural community or?
Yeah, Deer Park is an interesting community. It's we've been we opened up the clinic in 1998, and back then Deer Park really felt like it was a long way away from Spokane. Um, and ever since then, over the past 25 years, Deer Park just feels like it's becoming closer and closer to Spokane, and it's kind of coming into its own. The community itself is growing. We get a lot of people moving in there who want to just get a little bit out in the country, a little bit further away from the traffic in the city, but it's very close at the same time. It only took me about 30 minutes to get down here downtown and park, so it's a good place for that. Plus, it's quick to be able to get up the mountains, maybe 49 North or Schweitzer or Mount Spokane, and a lot of outdoor activities.
Yeah, just kind of close enough to the city,
It
but
is.
also close enough to the outdoors
Exactly.
and everything like that. So you opened the clinic in '98. Were you involved with that, or did you
I
come in
was.
later?
Yes.
And just kind of how was the story of how did you get involved with opening this clinic up in Deer Park?
Sure. Well, originally the clinic, as I said, opened in '98. Originally, the two of the physicians who owned the clinic were working for the hospital at the time. There was a small critical access hospital right next to where our clinic is now, and they had made a decision to not have the physicians employed, and worked with them and with us to have a building right next door and to open up our own clinic right there. And so that's how Deer Park Family Care Clinic became in existence.
Awesome, awesome. And so I guess the question is, we could go back to March 2020 when
Yeah,
everything kind of went down.
sure.
What was kind of first response in the clinic? Small rural area. What's it called? Spokane obviously got a lot of cases really quickly
We
once
did. We were
things.
like an epicenter, weren't we?
Yeah. So kind of how was the response there? Were there a lot of cases up in Deer Park? Was it manageable? Hard to deal with. How was that?
Well, it was interesting, and I guess I might back up just a little bit because we talked about the clinic, but we also, and I also in the administrator for Deer Park Urgent Care, which we opened in '07, when the hospital that I talked about earlier, the hospital closed in 2008, and we knew that Deer Park still needed to have some acute care for people after hours on the weekends where our clinic isn't open, and so that's just so Deer Park Urgent Care is also there as well, and we've experienced a lot of differences between the clinic and the urgent care for COVID. But to your question, yeah, we all started noticing what I think it was mid-March of 2020. Things started changing. We had the lockdown, of course. Schools started closing. We had mandates of started looking at mask mandates and businesses closing and no access to toilet paper, all of that. What we started doing first at the clinic and at the urgent care was trying to figure out how to set up our structures. At that point, we felt temporarily, maybe for a few months, to how are we going to handle the differences between our regular patients coming in and people coming in who had COVID. At an urgent care or at a family medicine office, we're not set up with positive pressure rooms and ICU level air sterilization to be able to take care of people. And we didn't know how the disease was transmitted at that time, as you recall. And I think all of us remember things just were changing, I think, every other day. And so we were trying to keep up on top of that and at the same time keep seeing our sick patients, because before COVID, we're already a very busy practice, both at the urgent care and at the family care office. So what we did is we set up a different entrance for people who were sick, and we were able to assess them and find out, did we think they had COVID? Because we didn't have a good test at the time. We didn't have testing on site, and so we had to figure out all of that. But obviously, us, just like everyone else, we kind of hoped that this was going to be a temporary thing, and maybe things would just resolve over the summer. And so our next step, which we started, I believe we started at the urgent care first, was to start managing a lot of our patients if they came with being sick, which meant to us maybe a new cough, a fever, something along flu-y, cold symptoms. We started taking care of them outside. We would either see them in the parking lot, we would call them on the phone, starting with that. And then telephone visits really became the norm from April pretty much through the summer, which really changed the dynamics of both clinics.
Yeah. And you talk about, because it's always known that like COVID was a logistical nightmare for so many of the huge hospitals, but no one really talks about how it was for kind of the smaller clinics,
Right.
In these smaller towns. And so just how were you ever just at the point where you had to start refusing patients? Were there just too many? And also, was there ever just like, obviously with so much new information, like you said, was there a lot of people coming in thinking they had it, and obviously it was just a cold or things like that, that you had, and how was it like dealing with all of this, with all this new information and more panic coming in as the year went on?
Right. Well, the two offices, we had very different outcomes at both offices. At the urgent care at first, we saw a dramatic drop in patients coming in. People were staying at home. And if they weren't staying at home, they were not going to a clinic or not going to an urgent care or a hospital. That was the place they were wanting to stay away from because they felt that's where sick people were. So we went from seeing, on an average of say 30 some patients a day to some days seeing 2. And we made the decision. We have all of our employees and our staff that need to, they had to put food on the table, and we needed to retain them. So we just had to come up with all kinds of projects for people to do. The first one, we decided we had everyone painting. So went down to the paint store, we ordered new colors and painted the whole inside of the clinic. We started getting ready to do the outside. We had people out weeding in the gardens, and so it was just, so you might have seen your doctor out there, with a paintbrush and roller, and that lasted for quite a few months. At the family care clinic, just down the road, we continued to see patients, but we tried to keep all patients, if we could, out of the clinic. There was a stay-at-home order. We wanted people staying at home as much as they could. And as a healthcare facility, we wanted to promote that, and we wanted to be an example for everyone else. And so we did phone visits, which became very difficult because insurances were having their own struggles, because in the past, we're a rural health clinic. And what we need to do to be able to get paid by our majority of our population, which are either state or which would be Medicaid, or federal, which would be Medicare, and we need to have what's called a face-to-face visit. And telephone and video is not a face-to-face visit. So we had to work carefully with our insurance companies and with our payers and with the overseeing government entities that make these changes, and see how we were going to be able to bill for these telephone visits. Now, a problem we found in Deer Park and the north part, basically a rural area. We have a lot of rural patients that start in Spokane, but we have patients that go all the way up to the Canadian border, and then as far as Ferry County to the west, and then over into Ponderay County to the east, and even some into Idaho. A lot of these people don't have reliable internet, and we have a lot of elderly people that either both don't have reliable internet and might not be technology savvy to be able to FaceTime or use Zoom or all of these things that we've all learned about over the past couple of years. So we just use the telephone, but that started to be a big argument with insurance companies, because we said, look, we're trying to keep our patients safe, your members safe, but we need to take care of them. And the only way we can take care of them was on the phone. Yeah. And it's still a problem with that, trying to get paid, because we'll have a husband and wife couple. One will get paid normally for what we bill. The other one, they might deny for, the wrong type of service. And so we're constantly still trying to learn how to bill appropriately with that. And I think the insurance companies are trying to figure out what to do at the same time.
Yeah. Oh no, it
Yeah,
definitely sounds like
it was a mess.
yeah, and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, I'm sure that mess isn't going to get cleared
Yeah,
up anytime
I don't
soon.
think so. No,
I
it's going to
think-
be a while still.
Yeah, I'm sure they'd rather just wait for this whole COVID thing to.
Well, I mean, yeah, insurance companies like to deny things.
Yeah.
You know, it's easy to deny because then it costs me a lot of money and takes my billers a long time to try to figure out the mess and contest each denial.
Yeah, and so you talking about, I didn't know that you had patients from just such a huge geographical area.
It's a big area.
Yeah, and I guess kind of I want to move further in the timeline. You know, the first thing that kind of comes out is, or not comes out, that everyone wants to get is when testing became more and more available.
Yes.
Is that there's a huge rush for that? How was it like there? Like, were you getting people from all around? Were you just
Oh my
getting people in
gosh,
the city?
yes.
Or?
Yeah, testing, we became able to do our own on-site testing using the antibody testing. I think it was probably October, right around the October time of 2020. We started doing antigen testing, and then we were able to send out for PCRs using one of the local labs here in Spokane. The PCR test then and now still takes, up to 72 hours. And so if you have a patient who's symptomatic and we want them to stay home, waiting those few days was difficult. So we were excited to get this antibody test, or antigen test, I'm sorry. We have antibody testing as well, but that's a separate story. So that all of a sudden became a huge change at the urgent care. That's when the urgent care went from seeing, just a few patients a day to all of a sudden the word on the street went out that urgent care was testing. And we had people wanting to get tests. They wanted to get, their employers are wanting to get them tested. They're wanting to go, get on an airplane. They're wanting to travel. They're wanting to do all this stuff, and they're wanting to get tests. And it's been difficult because as an urgent care, we want to take care of our patients, but we're primarily set up to take care of people who are sick, who have symptoms. And so we had people coming in without symptoms, but they wanted to go see grandma for Thanksgiving in last November.
Yeah.
Or they're wanting to go see mom and dad during Christmas time last year. And so they wanted to get the whole family tested. Now, they were fine. They had no symptoms, but they wanted to get tested. And so what we had to work with, we're not a testing facility. We're not a facility that you can just drive in, swab, do a nasal swab back and forth, stick it in the machine and say, see you later. We're set up to have an appointment with the provider, have the provider talk with you, decide what's the appropriate measure to do, and to order the test, just like if you went in because you had a cough and cold, pre-COVID.
Yeah.
And that's been difficult, but we're still doing, we're seeing 50 plus people a day just for COVID testing right now.
Wow.
And it's kind of putting a big drain because it's limiting the amount of people that we can see that have, breaks and cuts and, sinus infections and earaches and headaches and all of this kind of stuff. We're trying to balance those with our COVID testing. So at the urgent care now, we've actually limited the time frame that we're doing COVID testing for people to just walk in and drive up. Yeah. We're hoping that we get, Spokane area gets to a point where we might have local, kind of drive up easily accessible testing facilities for people who want to go to these concerts and restaurants and traveling and going to Canada. I get a lot of calls about we want to go to Canada and get testing. At our family care clinic, we have a full on-site lab, including we do PCR testing there on site, and it's great, and we're able to do it for our patients. But we can't open it up to everyone else because we just don't have we wouldn't be able to manage the volume to be doing rapid PCR tests for everyone who needed to get into Canada, for example.
Yeah, and it's just,
it's crazy.
Yeah, and it's just such a huge geographical area. Like,
you
think it's a rural area, there's not going to be that much, but everyone wanted to.
No, you're right. I mean, I had some people who needed to go. They were going to Europe for a wedding. They lived up in Republic or live up in Republic. They drove all the way down from Republic to Deer Park to come get testing. So then they had to get testing 2 different days. To meet 2 different requirements of 2 different countries in Europe. And so they're driving down from Republic or driving down from Northport. We have people calling. I just got an email today from a family coming down from Canada to, because Canada has now opened back up but there's a requirement for testing. So we're trying to work with that and just see what we can do each time.
It's definitely, I
It's
can't
nuts.
even understand
Yeah, yeah.
how much logistics and has to deal with that. So I guess kind of moving on, like you're obviously talking like, the clinic, it had barely anyone coming and
Yeah.
then testing happened.
Right.
Do you kind of see also these peaks and valleys with the spikes that COVID has had throughout these years?
We have. I mean, we're definitely coming up on holiday season when we have, we had that. We knew there were going to be a big peak when all of a sudden the borders opened up, when they opened up for traveling, when they start having more testing requirements with schools. We're seeing a lot. But at the same time with testing, we're also having these huge, like we are also doing vaccines and doing boosters. And now just last week, the state and the country opened up to be able to give, kids from ages 5 to 12 the Pfizer vaccine. And so now we're having a huge amount of patients and parents wanting to get their kids vaccinated, which is great because that's kind of where we need to be going toward. So now not only do we have the testing for people who might have symptoms or concern because they were exposed, and everybody's been exposed, and so you have that, and then we also have our vaccination side where we're constantly doing vaccination clinics and trying to get more and more people vaccinated.
Yeah. That was actually because obviously next point in the timeline
Yeah,
is
sure.
vaccination.
Okay,
so
great.
I
Good
was just
segue.
I know. I'm glad you brought it up. And so obviously Spokane County, vaccination rate could be higher.
It could be higher.
This is just surrounding counties could be higher. But you said you've seen a lot of people coming in, and kind of how has that been dealing with, 3 different vaccines all getting approved by the FDA at different times? Just how was dealing with that and dealing with, people not knowing or with, people having different information about the vaccines and things like that.
Right. Well, we were very excited when the vaccine came out back in December 2020. And so all our staff, the majority of us were vaccinated by the end of the year to the early part of January of this year. And that was with the Pfizer vaccine. Right when Moderna became available, we didn't make a choice to get the Pfizer vaccine in our clinic because we just didn't. There were 2 problems with having Pfizer at the time. The primary problem for us was that you could only order it in almost 1,000 doses, and so we couldn't manage in our clinic to be able to hold on to 1,000 doses. We wanted to, we left that to the larger groups like Providence and Multicare here in Spokane, and then they did the stuff over at the arena. But once Moderna became available to order, we were early on in getting the Moderna vaccine, and we started having. It was very exciting for the first couple months because the Moderna vaccine comes in a vial, and we call it a multi-dose vial. So it's just one vial, and you can take out as many doses as in the vial, and it was supposed to be a 10-dose vial. And we learned from one of our colleagues up north at Dr. Bennett's office in Riverside that you're able to get sometimes a little bit. If you're really careful and used a special kind of syringe, you can get 11 doses out of a 10-dose vial. And this stuff was gold back then.
Yeah.
And so just getting that extra dose was just exciting because we just had people banging down the doors wanting to get vaccinated. And about a month or so into it, it started becoming kind of difficult because if we had 15 people that we wanted to get vaccinated. Well, that's 2 vials, right? So, but then we have 5 to 7 leftovers. And so then that became well, who do you know? Who do you know? And then we literally would be going down the street. There was this one time I was driving down the street. I'd just gone to the post office, and I'm driving back to the clinic, and I see one of our local pastors walking from the post office back to his church. And I asked him, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, I was just praying that I could get the vaccine," and you pull over. So he literally jumps in his car, follows me back to the clinic, and we got him vaccinated. And there were other stories. We were doing a lot of on-site vaccines. We'd go to a couple different adult family homes, and we would take care of them on site. So if we found 10 people at an adult family home, we'd just drive down there, get them all taken care of at the same time. There was one time when we were at an adult family home, and I think it was just one of the patients there declined the vaccine, and all of a sudden we're sitting there, and once we puncture the vial, we had 6 hours.
Yeah.
So it's like puncture, set the stopwatch.
Yeah.
And so she declined. I looked down, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I only have a half an hour. What am I going to do with this piece of gold? Because this was early on.
Yeah.
And there was a business about just around the corner, and we happened to know the owners of the business, and I called them up and said, hey, one of you want to get vaccinated? And they weren't on the schedule at that point. You know, they were, you know, I think we had like 3 different tiers of people.
Yeah.
And they were a couple tiers down, and I said, look, we'll get you taken care of. I've got this. I got to throw it away. And we ran down there and just took care of them right there in the office. And it was just all these exciting times back then. It was, we didn't even realize, I don't think, back then that there would become kind of these 2 camps
Yeah.
of some people who are vaccinated and the people who aren't vaccinated.
Yeah, I mean, that's just, I can't imagine just walking down the street and someone just rolls
Yeah.
down their window. Do
Yeah,
you want
like,
to get vaccinated right now?
Isn't
Like,
that crazy?
That is,
Yeah.
and
It
it was like liquid gold at that
It
point.
was,
With
yeah.
Just, and I remember back home just waiting for the website to refresh and then clicking 2 things and then getting a notification, sorry, we're
Right.
out of appointments.
Exactly,
So,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just glad you got it to as many people as possible.
We just did what we could do. We were calling, and yeah, we had lists and lists of people who would just be on call. You call us anytime, we'll come on over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just kind of finally, well, we're out where we are now. Like cases are down. There has been a bit of a spike, and you said there was probably going to be a spike but kind of how do you see it going forward? Obviously, like you said, there are 2 camps. Vaccinations. It feels like that a lot of the people who got vaccinated are the ones who will be getting vaccinated.
Yeah.
The people who won't. So just kind of how do you see, is this a thing that we're just going to have to deal with going forward? Obviously, booster shots are a thing. And how do you see just your community doing right now?
Whew. That's a big question.
Yeah, it was a lot. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, it's just, yeah, that's a question that I think we all struggle with, and I mean, obvious, I just wish that people, I think you're right in first, or unfortunately, that, we definitely have people who are, right now there's people who are vaccinated, the people who are not vaccinated, there's definitely some, people have definitely some, solid reasons about why they're not vaccinated. And for them to become vaccinated now is going to take, some information. What I do wish is that people who are not vaccinated would talk with their doctor. That's all I ask.
Yeah.
At least get some valid points across, have people understand, so everyone can understand what's going on. We have a lot of people who are, our big push right now are boosters. We're doing a lot of boosters right now, either boosters or kids vaccines. That's what's going on right now in our clinic, at least. Where we're going forward is, yeah, I'm a little bit worried.
Yeah.
But I know we need to just kind of push forward on the campaigns, get some good solid educational campaigns out there, dispel a lot of the myths about what's going on with the pandemic. I think we're Americans, and as Americans, there's a couple things that, we don't like to do. We don't like to do what people are telling us to do.
Yeah.
We want to have our own freedoms,
Exactly.
and I agree. We're the best country in the world, and we lead in so many things. And sometimes, though, we get a little bit egocentric, and we don't realize that this isn't something that's happening just here in Spokane or Spokane County or Washington or the U.S. It's happening globally.
Yeah.
And talking to people in some of these other countries that don't have access to health care and don't have access to a vaccine that would do anything to get a vaccine, we need to see this as more of a global problem. But I don't know how that's going to happen.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, fortunately, I don't have to make those decisions
Yeah.
either. I'll just focus on my little community.
Yeah, and just do the best you can
Yeah,
to get as many
right.
people and
Right.
as many shots. And honestly, thank you so much for coming in today. It was a great conversation. I learned a lot of things about just, how you guys are doing things up there, and y'all are doing great work. And, I hope you have a good day, and hopefully we could see a future where we don't have to think about this anymore.
Yeah, well, nice to meet you. Come on up to Deer Park sometime. I'll bring you out to coffee or something.
All right. Awesome.
All right, thanks.